Good afternoon. This is a special meeting of the Essex County Board of County Commissioners, and we're going to call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Cooper,
Here.
Commissioner Gill, Commissioner Gill,
Here.
Commissioner Graham.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson. Absent. Commissioner Luciano. Absent. Commissioner Mercado, absent. Commissioner Siebold.
Here.
Commissioner Vice President Pomares.
Here.
Commissioner
I have before me the certification from the clerk that the meeting is in compliance with the Open Meeting Public Act. And before we get started today, my name is Carlos Pomares. I serve as the Vice President, and I'm going to be filling in for President Wayne Richardson, who could not be with us today. And I just want to share a statement. This is a special meeting that we're going to have. And I want to acknowledge Commissioner Tashami Cooper, who will be leading this meeting, other attending commissioners, the administration, participating department directors, and our viewing audience. Good afternoon and welcome to this special meeting. This meeting was called in response to feedback received following the June 8th primary election in Essex County. The purpose of this meeting is to identify issues, review practices, and make recommendations to guard against a recurrence of these issues that may have occurred on June 8th. With that, I turn this meeting over to Commissioner Cooper, who will be chairing this meeting. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice President Pomares. Thank you to my colleagues in attendance and to all our constituents that are watching via live stream. It's my honor to lead the discussion on an extremely pressing concern. Roughly 3 weeks ago, we were all called to exercise our civic duty and participate in the primary elections on June 8th. On election day, there were a number of reported issues from an administrative and operational standpoint. Voting machines were delivered late, a lack of privacy while folks were casting their votes, voting machines were mislabeled, and polling locations were not opened in a timely manner. Elections is paramount to our democracy and it must be protected. As government leaders, we are here to collectively accept responsibilities for these issues that occurred and ensure going forward that we have the trust of the public, especially in the upcoming November election. So to start this process, I would like to hear from, just acknowledge everyone that's here, especially from the administration side and our constitutional officers. So let's begin with the administration, please.
Good afternoon, good evening, Madam Chair. Robert Jackson, County Administrator.
Good evening, Courtney Gassion, Essex County Council.
Now the constitutional officers, please.
Chris Durkin, Essex County Clerk.
Patricia Sango, Acting Superintendent of Elections.
Linda Von Essay, Clerk of the Essex County Board of Elections.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I ask, make a request that the Vice President just state that certification of the meeting for our records?
Yes, ma'am. Vice President Pomares.
Mr. Pomares,
Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you could, I did read, acknowledge before that we had certification from the clerk that this meeting is in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act.
thank you. I just want to be sure, Mr. Vice President, I missed that.
No problem.
Thank you, Vice President Pomares. Now, in response to the issues and concerns that I just detailed, Mr. Durkin, could you please give us an overview?
Okay, through you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank the commissioners for hosting this special meeting on the June 8th, 2021 primary election. As far as the Essex County Clerk's Office is concerned and conducting this election, helping to conduct the election, We, as an office, mailed 42,981 vote-by-mail ballots to registered voters. Those are voters that are registered Democrats, registered Republicans, and unaffiliated voters. There were 10,614 vote-by-mail votes that were cast out of that total. We mailed 502,870 sample ballots to Essex County voters. So that's the total of registered voters, 502,870. We mailed those sample ballots 13 days before Election Day. We received a notice from the Postal Service, because we have a barcode and track the ballots, that 100% of the sample ballots were received by voters 100% by 7 days prior to Election Day. Now, we did receive complaints that voters did not receive their ballots. What our confirmation is that the sample ballots, 100% of the sample ballots, were already delivered to the local post offices and were scheduled for each route by 7 days prior to Election Day. We have notified each postmaster of each municipality where we received complaints, and even the ones we didn't, to follow up to make sure that sample ballots are delivered directly to each voter, because it's a very important notice, and it's obviously statutory that each voter receives notice prior to an election that an election is taking place. We on election night, we had election night reporting from Belleville. This is remote tally. You know, we are the only county in the state that has remote tally, where we go out to municipalities and tally the results from the municipalities to our website to have real-time election results. We tallied, usually in previous elections, we tallied from every municipality. This election, because of the lateness in receiving some tally stations, we tallied from Belleville, Bloomfield, East Orange, Irvington, Milburn, Montclair, and obviously we are in Newark, so we tallied Newark real time. The other municipalities we had to bring back to the county seat to read from there. But I thought, as far as remote tally goes, it went well, it went smooth, and in November there's going to be a remote tally from all 22 municipalities. We met the deadline of election result certification. The deadline is now been pushed forward. It is June 22nd. So that is 14 days after Election Day. Previously it was 6 days to certify election results. Now it's 14 days to certify election results, and that is due to new state laws concerning vote-by-mail ballots being able to come in through the Postal Service for 6 days, and also that's through the Board of Elections, and also curing ballots, which is, and Linda will clarify, but I'm pretty sure that's another 11 days after Election Day that voters can cure their ballots. That's the reason why the certification deadline was increased and delayed for 14 days. It wasn't delayed, it's statutory that certification is June 22nd. This was the first election, first primary election, not the first election, the first primary election where we rolled out our new voting method, where it's hand-marked paper ballots and optical scan readers to read the ballots. Overall, I think we did receive good reception from voters, although there were, some voter issues and complaints, and those are being looked at and investigated, and better practices are being put into place. So that's just a quick overview, and I'm here for any questions that you may have.
Through you, Mr. Vice President, Commissioner Johnson has joined us.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Durkin, for that overview and response. Can we please now hear from Ms. Von Nessy?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for hosting this meeting. Elections are really the backbone of our democracy and something that I take very seriously and share your passion, or we wouldn't all be here. This has been a different election season. We started in April implementing our new voting machine for our school board elections. Several weeks later, we went on to our nonpartisan municipal elections, which were 3 pretty small towns. And now for the subject of this meeting, our primary election on the 8th. The Board of Elections is responsible for multiple parts of the process. We are responsible for the mail-in ballots, and as Chris mentioned, the Cure ballots, which has been a tremendous success throughout the state. It has delayed the certification, but that's what we're here for, to encourage voting and make sure that every vote counts. So it's a good thing. We're responsible for our poll workers and our polling places, and with that, we have to train our poll workers. Training poll workers in the implementation of new voting machines is very, very intense and difficult. We had close to 30 classes. I attended every class with the exception of one. We had a representative from Dominion with us who did the hands-on training of the voting machine. I really believe our training classes went well. I see the difference between, and I have a breakdown that I'd like to share with all of you. I'll make sure I send it up to Deborah. In the April election, the return of the ballots, I'm sure you know that the paper ballot is the official ballot. The memory card that Chris uses to count the ballots at the end of the night and get on his website, that is not the official ballot. The official ballot is the paper ballot, which is our paper trail. So returning of those ballots on the election night in April was really upsetting, and was that, and along with the complaints that we received about privacy, was really, we were intense in our training to make sure that the workers knew how to return the ballots and offered the privacy sleeves. The change from April to June was great. I will say, out of 550 election districts, and you may not think this is good, but if you saw April, there were 400 districts in the county did it properly. We still have 150 that we have to work seriously on, but the fact that we have that targeted is going to make for a better general election. With training, we had, it's really surprising to me, we had people that pulled out because we were getting mixed messages from the state about the masks. And poll workers had a difficult time thinking that they were going to sit for 14 hours next to another poll worker that says they're vaccinated and they have no proof that they were. So throughout the state, we were losing poll workers. Essex wasn't as bad as some of the other counties, but it was somewhat of a crisis a week before election. And with that, you all know that the governor changed the rate. They increased it to $400. Well, a week before election, and I think it was actually less than a week before election, we already had a lot of our poll workers trained. We added classes on. We had them that Saturday. We had them Sunday. We had them Monday. We had 2 or 3 on Monday. And then comes election day. As you might guess, that once they heard $400, some of the people that had worked before were coming out of the woodwork. So we did have enough poll workers to conduct an election. However, with that, some of them did not attend a training class. That is troublesome, but a couple of days before election, it's what we have to go by. I think we did a decent job. What was the problems that we encountered that falls under the jurisdiction of the Board of Elections that I was given on this issues list from the the Commissioner's Office is troublesome to me. I will work on it, and I have answers for every one of them. I've done a complete investigation of anything that I had access to. As you know, we just moved, so I have boxes all over the place. But what I was able to go through and find documentation, I did. I will share that with you. And I thank you very much for your time and for trying to make this a better process for November. And I'm sure the three offices will do their best to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Von Nessy. May we please now hear from Ms. Spango?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for hosting this meeting. I am Patricia Spango, the Acting Superintendent of Elections for Essex County. My department, what we are responsible for is we are in charge of all the voter registrations, new registrations, change of addresses, party affiliations. We print the poll books. We have a warehouse where we house 700 voting machines. It is our job to get the voting machines ready. We test them, we certify them, we have to seal them, and it is our obligation to have a contract with a trucking company to distribute the voting machines to the polling locations, which is provided, the list is provided by the Board of Elections. I am as upset with what has happened this last election. I can tell you, I know it does come back onto me. I am the acting superintendent. However, the county was ready. We were completely ready. We started. I have a whole time frame that I can send over to the commissioners if you would like. We did submit a report of unsatisfactory performance. It was truly a trucking issue. We were ready. I have pictures of my warehouse where all of the machines were tested, certified, closed, and sealed, and lined up by municipality, ready to be shipped out. We did not one day did we get enough trucks or large enough trucks to deliver those machines. I have spoken with the owner of the trucking company, and if we are moving forward, which I don't know, but what can we do to not have this happen for the general election? And one of the things that I told him was the schedule that he had set up, and I questioned him. What he did was he did a lot of the suburbs he delivered to first, and he left Newark for last, which in my opinion, Newark being the largest city and the most difficult to maneuver for parking and delivery, should be first. So moving forward for the general election, Newark, Irvington, East Orange, and Orange will be delivered first so that this can never happen again. And if there are some cleanups that we have to do, it's much easier to go back and deliver one or two locations rather than leaving the entire city for last. And I sincerely apologize. I had a communication problem with the trucker. I was on the phone with him until 10 o'clock. I didn't know until 10 o'clock the night before the election that he came back with the machines. He assured me that he was going to be at my warehouse, at our warehouse, at 5 a.m. on election morning with 5 trucks to deliver the 33 machines. I had my staff at the warehouse at 4 a.m. waiting for him. He never showed up at 5 o'clock, never showed up at 5:15, 5:30. He showed up at 5:45 with 2 small trucks, which is why it took the 3 hours to deliver those machines. But what I did do was, with the help of the Board of Elections, at 6 a.m., I went to the Board of Elections, and Ms. Bonessi had her staff stop, and we had the locations of who did not have the machine. She divided out her staff, her staff contacted every one of the poll workers at those locations to advise them that the machines were going to be delayed and to use the provisional ballots. And I am happy to say no voter was disenfranchised. It might not have been the way they should have voted or wanted to vote, but at least they were given a provisional ballot. So again, I apologize, and I'm more than happy to share my timeline with you, and I'll answer any questions. I did look on the questions that you were submitted from the commissioners. I can answer some of them now if you like, however you want me to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Spango. I'm going to start by allowing my fellow commissioners to ask each constitutional officers as well as the administration any questions, because we represent these districts and we individually have received a laundry list of complaints on a lot of the different issues that you all responded to today. Before I forget, I would, a couple of you referenced that you've done some investigation into some of these issues and complaints already, and you referenced that your ability to send us a written response about your outcomes and what your action plan is going to be going forward. So I'm going to request that now at the top of the meeting before I forget. So commissioners, any questions for the constitutional officers or the administration?
Commissioner Cooper, I have some questions. And perhaps Linda Van Essie can answer this. I received a number of complaints of people who voted who didn't receive privacy screens. They didn't even know they were supposed to get one, and it was not offered. And many people complained because they filled out the ballots. Then they took the ballots up to the machine, and the poll worker could see how they voted. They didn't realize they could turn the ballot over and put it in the machine upside down. It didn't have a privacy screen. They were carrying it and they put it into the machine, and the poll worker standing there could see all their votes. Can we improve that procedure? Apparently, many of the poll workers simply didn't know about the privacy screens, or they didn't offer the privacy screens. I received this complaint from many voters.
Commissioner Siebel, yes, I'd like to answer your complaint or concern. I share that concern also. Privacy, it's a privacy sleeve that we're talking about, and they were trained. We had actually a great class in Livingston, and that was covered. They went up, they had hands-on with the privacy sleeve. If someone missed the class, I asked everyone there to please make sure you emphasize this. This was our biggest, out of April and May, I will say the machine was well received. The only two issues that we got feedback from was the privacy and the return of the supplies. So we were right on top of the privacy. I think that we have to remember something, and I'm not just using this as an excuse. And Pat, Commissioner, I'm sure you remember the implementation of the old machine that we had. We've both been around a long time. Implementing that machine, the ABC machine, there was voter outreach, which was, they took them to senior centers throughout the county. They took them to parks, they took them to the zoo. Voters were trained on how to vote on these machines, as well as training the poll worker. Because of COVID, we were not able to do that. So I think that was a missing piece to this. But I hear your concern, and I am working on finding a way to make sure that that's used, and that they realize that voters can turn that any which way that they want to and put it into the machine. And also, I had a great conversation this weekend with Senator Gill, and she brought up a concern which I'm sure that you will appreciate. And it's something that I didn't think of. I followed the guidance of the voting machine company, that if a ballot is spoiled, it's returned to the poll worker and you write void on it, and they are allowed to get a new ballot. But at the same time, when you're giving that ballot that's voided, the poll worker's seeing how their original vote was. So I am worried, and I wish I had thought of that, and she didn't, but I guess that's why she's the senator. But we will work on that to find out where I'm looking into getting some kind of a box with a slot on the top that right there and then they can deposit that in their box and then they will get a new ballot so that the poll worker does not touch it. So anything that's happened, we are on top of, and our goal is to make this by November as close to 100% as possible. I am just grateful that, to the best of our knowledge, that no one was disenfranchised through this election. Mistakes happen, but I think that we got through them and every voter got their vote that I'm aware of.
Thank you, Linda. And just to finish up with the privacy folder, it was a Livingston Town Council member who never received one and was never offered one. So, I mean, I'm sure that reached, I did hear that from other people too, so I'm sure that reached a lot of people.
I'm sure. I've heard it from other people also.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your answer, Linda.
Thank you, Commissioner Siebel. Anyone else with questions?
I just wanted to finish. Will they be aware that, so the voters know the ballot can be put in upside down so the poll worker doesn't see how they voted?
Well, they are instructed that they can do that, and they are also, the vote, it's in their instruction pamphlet. All this is in their pamphlet. Maybe there's something we can do between the county clerk's office and mailing of the sample ballot, or get the word out there other ways prior to Election Day.
Good. That would be helpful. Thanks. Thank you, Commissioner Cooper.
Thank you, Commissioner Siebel. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Gill.
A few questions, thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Gill.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. So first of all, thank you to the President and Vice President for calling this meeting, and have a few questions, and would start by saying, first of all, of course, have the utmost respect for all of our election officials and the job that they've had to do and the challenges that they've had to manage the past year. So let me start by saying I know this job is not easy, and I know the challenges that you've had to face, over the past year, and I know that you're committed to wanting to get it right. And that's, to me, what this today is really all about. That's what this hearing today is all about, is not only to just flag issues, but to make sure that we're doing everything we can to be first in class, like we know this county usually is and can be. Moving forward, we ran into some challenges on Election Day primary to this year that for a variety of reasons, I think we can improve on and really have to improve on before the general election. Each of you know that I was a huge proponent of moving to these machines, that I have spent a lot of years working on the issue of getting the county to use paper ballots. So I am so pleased that we are finally arrived at this point as a county, but also want to make sure that we also do it in a way that protects each individual constituent's ability to have the right to vote, and to make sure that no one is disenfranchised. The delivery of the machines. So some of these will be just comments, and then I just have a couple of questions, and I'm not sure who the right person. So I'll leave it up to whoever, if it's Chris, Linda, or Patty, who's the best person to answer that question on the delivery. That makes sense. I understand, and I think obviously going forward, I'm sure whatever happened there in terms of the delivery can be fixed quickly, and we'll make sure that just doesn't happen again. I'm sure you received many of the same complaints, so to speak, that I did about locations not being open, or locations not being open on time, or board workers not, and those will all be sent over appropriately for those to be looked at. In Montclair, we had a particularly unique issue which does have me concerned about the issue of disenfranchisement. There was an article less than 5 days ago about a candidate whose name was on the ballot, who was claiming that there were no recorded votes in the district that this candidate lived in. And that I happen to live in the same election district that this candidate lives in. And it was a polling location that I'm sure you are familiar, that shared 2 election districts: Ward 3, District 4, Ward 4, District 6. I'm still not completely clear exactly what happened. So I just think, for the record, can we understand what happened in those 2 election districts as it pertains to 2 issues? Why were voters given ballots that did not have the proper names of who was running for office in those individual districts? Secondly, what instructions were they then given as once this issue was identified and flagged? What instructions were they given once it was identified that the wrong ballots were being given to voters? And third, as a result, how can we assure the public that whatever happened, the votes that were tabulated in those 2 districts have been tabulated with integrity, I guess is maybe the right word, and most importantly, that people were not disenfranchised? Because I want to believe that no one was disenfranchised, but I'm not so sure in those particular districts, based on what both my personal experience was at the poll and based on other reports from people who voted in those 2 particular those 2 particular election districts, which are in 2 separate wards, but were housed in 1 polling location.
So this is Courtney Gassione, Essex County Council. Before any of the constitutional officers respond to Commissioner Gill's inquiry, the issue that he has raised is actually the subject of a civil litigation that was just filed late last week. So for further discussion to take place, I would just request that we go into closed session at this point in order to have a fuller discussion of the issues that have been raised by the commissioner.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gassione. Then Commissioner Gill, would you like to discuss this issue right now, or would you like to hold it for later in the meeting?
I'll ask, I guess, for our council and for Ms. Gassione, I mean, I can ask questions that are not specific to that particular litigation. I mean, I can ask them general questions, but if we think we need to go to closed session, maybe I'll just ask. I don't know if those questions are going to be a part of that litigation or not, or what. I'll defer to Mr. Parlavecchio and obviously to Ms. Gassione about if we need to go into closed session or not. I can rephrase my question not to be about the specific, at least from what I read, the specific complaint. So I can ask the question this way, and Ms. Gassione, you'll tell me if this question is better discuss them. Do we know why the 2 machines were programmed incorrectly to tabulate votes?
There is Courtney Gassione, Essex County Council. There is a response to that inquiry. I'm not going to say a yes or no, because then that would indicate that there was actually a programming error. But I think to give you a more fuller response, it would have to be done in closed session.
Okay.
So Commissioner Gill, maybe it's best if we just park that question related to Ward 3/Ward 4 incorrect ballots into later in the meeting, and then go into a closed session. Just in the event if we have any members of the public watching, we can have that discussion a little bit later so that you can fully get all of your answers to your questions.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. Can I ask a couple additional questions, just then unrelated to those?
Absolutely.
Those issues. Just to go back to the issue of privacy, again, a comment. I mean, I definitely took quite a few reports regarding the ballots being processed face up, which I think allows then the board workers to view and see how someone may have been voted. So I just wanted to confirm again, the instructions right to the board workers are for those to be processed face down through the machine.
The instructions to the board worker is that the voter can, is to give them a privacy sleeve so it wouldn't matter at that point. But for any reason that it comes out of the privacy sleeve, the ballot can be any which way, upside down, anyway, and it's up to the voter how they want to insert it into the scanner. But the board workers are instructed.
So the board. So I'm sorry, Linda. So the voter. So in these particular instances, the board worker was feeding the ballots into the machine. So what I'm hearing you say is that actually the instruction from the board worker to the voter should have been that the voter is supposed to be feeding the ballot into the machine.
The board worker is not supposed to touch the ballot unless they're asked for assistance.
That's
and
definitely,
then there's this assistant process.
I'm sorry, I would definitely flag that. Because I went to multiple polling locations and the board workers were feeding them. They were feeding the ballots through the machine.
That's something that has to be addressed. I mean, if they were asked for assistance, if the voter was having difficulty, they were asked for assistance, they are allowed to assist legally. However, that's not the process unless they're asked.
Is there a requirement in the training for the amount of partitions to fill out the ballot, for people filling out the ballot? Are the board workers instructed that how many spots to set up within a polling location?
They have to set up everything that they're sent.
Okay.
My understanding is that the commissioner registration, superintendent of elections sent one quad and a single, which would give them for the primary election 5 individual places for a voter to go up. That will increase for the general election, obviously.
Okay. Did we think we got enough? I mean, is there anything more from Dominion that we think we needed in terms for training purposes? Do we feel that we got everything we needed from Dominion for the purposes of being able to train?
They were very responsive to me for training. They went out of their way to give me people at every class. And when classes were added on that last 4 days, they brought people in from out of state. We had 18 rovers on election day. Actually, the rover that went to Montclair was not aware of any of the issues that went on, but we could discuss that later. But there was a rover from Dominion that went there and asked the poll workers if they had any issues.
Mm-hmm. So the issue of, I'm assuming that as we kind of continue to recover from the pandemic, the issue of poll workers filling the positions, maintaining that commitment, if there's more clarity on the issue like masks, et cetera, will help on the training side of this as well as we move to November.
Yes, I agree. Training has to, without training of both the poll worker and the voters, they have to have an opportunity to see. As you know, the primary is a light turnout. So we're going to go through this again in November with voters coming that have never seen this machine or voted on a paper ballot machine. So just because we've already used the machine, I don't think that we should forget about voter outreach. I think that still has to happen.
Got it. Is there a discussion now to spend some resources on doing that? I guess that question would be for both you and the administration on anything more specific that we have not done in the past on that front.
I'm sure we will.
Okay.
The administration has, as my co-workers will attest to this, they've been wonderful to us through the last year. anything that we needed to make the process work. They've given us anything and more that we could ever have asked for. So I'm sure that we can work out a plan and do a better job. I mean, we do try, believe me.
Sure. What's the total number of poll workers for the county?
We're close to 2,500 poll workers.
Okay. And just roughly, how many of those usually how many of those would we expect to return in November from the primary?
Well, I understand that there's a bill right now that should go through that's going to increase their compensation to $400 for the November election, and maybe going forward, I'm sure that you can't really give $400, take it away and expect to have them return. So I'm sure that we'll have people that will want to work and return.
But and what I'm hearing you say, Linda, though, it's really twofold, right? It's the training of the poll workers and voter education, like concurrently, like each are equally important as we move towards November.
I agree, because the voters knowing how to vote is going to prevent a line from forming. And that's the last thing we really want, because then the security is already an issue. The privacy is already an issue. So we'd like to get people in and out, especially, who knows what November is going to bring with COVID. But we want people in and out as quickly as possible and as accurately. So I think that's important.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll save some of the other questions for when we go into closed session, and just finally comment to say, I think I think by and large, again, just from the sample that I saw, I mean, many of the poll workers did execute in the proper way. I think there's some just practical issues that I think we'll be able to correct as we and you will be able to correct as you move forward. With instructions that help protect the privacy a little bit more, both in terms of when the ballot is handed, the sleeve, the actual partition that you go to, and then, when that actual ballot is physically run through the machine, whether the board worker interacts with that ballot. Again, there's at least, I guess, one of the practical, which even with the pilots that I did not really appreciate, I can say with the pilots, the board workers were right where were trained to the best of their ability. So the board workers there was no hesitation with the board worker or with how the room was set up, which is also how these polling locations actually now are set up is actually something that's even more critically important, because it's the space that you need, right, for those partitions to have the privacy you need to fill out the actual ballot itself, sleeve or no sleeve, and having those partitions set up.
That's very important. And prior to COVID, when we were purchasing these machines, we got through Newark and we were able to visit every location and measure and make sure that we had enough room for the amount of voting machines that would go to that district and the amount of privacy booths. Then COVID hit and we never got through the rest of the county. So that's a summer project.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Commissioner Gill. Commissioners, any other questions?
Commissioner Cooper, I just remembered one question that I neglected to ask. I had a complaint from someone who went to vote, and at the polling place, there was no privacy booth to sit at, only a long table. And that individual had to sit at that table with many other people who were filling out their voting forms.
Well, that's really a question for the superintendent, because she provides the quads and the privacy booths. They were supposed to be delivered to every location.
Apparently, this location did not have it.
Well, if
And
you
I
could share that
remember where it
location
was.
with me.
I don't remember where it was. I had so many people speak to me and I never wrote down where it was, but they did complain they had to sit at a long table and other people were voting with them.
That is a problem.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten that complaint.
So Commissioner Siebold, you're saying that the site that this person went to didn't have the privacy
Correct.
partitions at all?
That's what I was told.
Ms. Spango, do you have a response for Commissioner Siebold?
I think she got knocked off. She had texted me and said that she was knocked off.
Well, that needs to be investigated. I would say, I would think that Linda would be able to reach out to the board workers and identify which district, and then Patty Spango would be able to make sure she supplies that district with the proper voting privacy.
That's
So
a good
Commissioner,
idea.
as we're waiting to see if Ms. Spango can get back on, we will make a note of this question. So if she's able to rejoin us, we can ask her during this hearing. If not, we'll submit it to her in writing. Hopefully, she can make that a part of her written response back to us. Commissioner, if you could remember the location, that would be fantastic, because then that would help Ms. Vanessa to target in on the poll workers.
I don't remember. And so many people spoke to me about the voting procedure that I do remember some, but I don't remember that. Sorry.
All right, thank
It
you.
was complained to me.
Commissioners, any other questions?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Cooper, one more. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Gill.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooper. Yeah, again, a comment, and it would just echo Commissioner Siebold's comment. I did receive a few of those as well. I'm less concerned on where they are, and just would ask that when we do the training again, that we really focus on two areas. One is the setup, the setup of the room, which I think is just, that to me is a big difference here, and the importance of particularly in places particularly in polling locations that are in like school cafeterias where people use those long tables, and that's what a lot of people did. They just used the long tables and they didn't use the partitions. In those situations. I'm not saying it was widespread. I don't know if it was widespread. I'm just asking that we again focus on that particular area, and then again the transfer of the ballot into the machine. Making sure that we're protecting the privacy of the individual voter. They're just, again, there is just quite a bit of a more opportunity to see how someone is voting in this current with this current setup. If you're not paying very, very close attention to both the sleeve and the transfer of the ballot into the machine, it is very easy to spot and see how someone is casting their vote.
Absolutely.
Again, so just to the extent that we can flag those two things as we're thinking about improving and stressing elements of the training, I think those are two areas to focus on. Thanks, Commissioner Cooper. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gill. It looks like Ms. Spango has rejoined us. While you were off, Ms. Spango, were you able to hear Commissioner Gill's and Commissioner Siebold's question?
I heard Commissioner Siebold's question, but my screen, I keep losing connection to the server and it freezes. So I heard Commissioner Siebold start talking and then I lost it. Now I'm back on.
Commissioner Siebold's and Commissioner Gill's question was that in a couple of districts within their respective areas, some of the polling sites lack the privacy booths, privacy partitions, so that some of their constituents had to vote, complete their ballot by sitting at just a long table with other people as they were completing their ballots. So the question was, why did some of those sites lack the privacy partitions?
Well, to my knowledge and my instructions with my warehouse staff, every single machine had 10 to 15 privacy sleeves inside the machine. Every machine that went out. So I don't understand.
You're talking about the quads and the singles, not the privacy sleeves.
Thank you. Yeah, not the privacy sleeve, the things that were set up that you walk in, they were like tall standing partitions.
We sent one quad and one single to every polling location. So why they did not receive it, I do not know.
Every polling district, I'm sorry, every polling district?
No,
If I could just interject here, and just for the sake of the transcripts here, please remind everyone to introduce yourself when you speak, because there's like 3 or 4 people speaking we haven't identified. Thank you.
Mr. Durkin, I'm sorry, you were asking a question.
I'm sorry, through you, Madam Chair. Chris Durkin, Essex County Clerk. I was just confirming that there was a quad and a single. I was asking if it was at each district or each polling location. And I'm hearing that it was each polling location. And I also heard that we are going to have more quads and singles for the general election. Patty Spango, is that correct?
Patty Spango, yes, that is correct, Chris.
So, to make sure that we're all on the same page, the quad is the tall standing up partition that had 3 or 4 different places that allowed people to fill in their ballots, and they were tall enough that it provided some privacy, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And then there was an individual one, I guess, that was standalone that you could put on top of like a tabletop one?
No, there was an individual cardboard one that stood up on the floor. And the reason for that is we originally ordered the quad that you were talking about that 4 voters can use. And we also ordered a single, but the singles, some of them were on back order. So we had to use the cardboard one for this, but for the general election, everything will be here.
All right, thank you.
And if I can, I'm sorry, Commissioner, Essex County Clerk Chris Durkin, there are also partitions, tabletop partitions available in each district for provisional ballot voters that can also be used for regular ballot voters if need be.
All right, thank you. All right, Commissioner Johnson, go ahead.
Yes, well, as you know, in Newark, we had many problems with machines delivered on time and getting into the facilities to so that they could set up on time. I would like to know, because I've been hearing different stories about how they were the people that were in the machines were told to start all the way up in West Essex and everything else and get to Newark and them last. And through that, Newark, a lot of voters, some of them voted and some of them didn't because they were on their way to work or things of that nature, and the machines hadn't gotten it yet. I would like to know what was the system in getting those machines to these proper polling sites so that the people can exercise their right to vote.
Commissioner Johnson, bear with us. It looks like Ms. Spango has dropped off again. Lionel, if you're listening, can you please reach out to see if you can assist Ms. Spango with her connectivity issues? In the meantime, Commissioner Johnson, we'll hold your question until we can get Ms. Spango back. Do you have any additional questions for Ms. Bonessi or Mr. Durkin?
Well, not at this time, because I'll wait till we go into closed session, because there are a few more questions that need to be asked, because as you know, being in the city of Newark and being a lifelong Newark resident, you get a lot of different opinions about what was going on and how this election transpired.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Palmeris, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a good number of my questions already asked by my colleagues, but I too wanted to discuss a little bit further about the delivery of the machines and what would be the plan of action. I don't know if some of the questions that I may have would be appropriate in open. So I may defer to that to a closed session if we go into that.
All right, thank you very. Commissioner Graham, do you have any questions?
No, I just had one comment. When I was voting myself, one of the poll workers gave me the ballot, and I went over to the side, but then there was other people over there on the side with me. When I went to put my ballot in the machine, she was standing right next to me. I knew what to do, but I just felt uncomfortable. I just thought she was a little too close. But I did turn it over so she couldn't see. But I know that, but a lot of people didn't know it. And in one of the locations, I think Florence Avenue School is a little tight, and there's 3. Let me see. I think it's 1 and 2 in the Westwood. So it's 3 districts in that one location. I don't know if they could use the hallway so everyone could, have more privacy. I'm not sure what could be done. That's all I have to say. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Graham. While we're still waiting for Ms. Spangle to come back, I do have a couple questions. Ms. Vanessa, how far in advance do the poll worker training start related to the election day? Do it start 2 weeks, 3 weeks out?
Commissioner Linda Vanessa, yes, actually it's by statute, the dates of training is between 10 and 21 days prior to election day. I can't say that we abide by that because we go longer and sometimes we start earlier depending on the election and the amount of territory we have to cover. For a primary or general, we're doing the whole county. School boards are just Irvington and Newark unless there's a special, and municipals are always smaller. But it is statutory, the dates of training.
And do people typically attend more than one training or just one training and that's it?
Linda Vanessa, I wish that was a problem. It's not, but we do in this past election with the new machines, we did have a few repeats. I wish we had more, but we did have a few.
What role do the judges play? You have a judge, and what role does the judge play?
Linda Vanessa, a judge is really by statute is a judge and inspector, supposed to be of opposite parties. The judge has no more power than any other poll worker. They usually are the person designated to take care of the forms and make sure that everything's completed properly and that everyone is the majority of the board is present at all time, but they do not have any more voting rights or any other rights that a poll worker doesn't have. It's usually just the paperwork.
I asked that question because a constituent and their list of complaints asked about the judge and suggested that perhaps since we have new machines, is there an opportunity to have the judge serve as almost like a trainer, especially listening to you a minute ago when you said the last 3 or 4 days leading up to election, you got a huge influx of new people coming on, right? Because that amount had been ratcheted up to $400. And perhaps, having them serve us almost like backfill to help you train the poll workers if they forget, when they're out there doing what they're doing, to remind them that they're standing too close to the machine, as Commissioner Graham just described her sliding her ballot through, to remind them that that's not the proper way, things that's supposed to be done. So I was just curious about their role. Thank you. Mr. Durkin, I have a quick question. In your presentation, initially, you talked about some towns having some kind of card reader where they were able to communicate the results in real time. Did you say that some towns had it and some towns didn't have one?
Yes. So that was based on the delivery of the remote tally readers, which we did not receive in time, which we have now, all of them, which we will be able to remote tally from all 22 municipalities. In previous elections, we have tallied results from each town hall. As the board workers came back
Oh,
into
perfect.
town hall.
You answered my follow-up.
Yes. So I couldn't hear you, but I'll finish up. As the board workers go back to their respective town hall in the town that they're working, their election district, they provide the results to the township clerk, which then goes to a representative in the county clerk's office. We are then able to put in the card reader of results, which then are read and can be remotely sent down to the county clerk's server and put up on our website. So we have real-time results on election night. On this election night, we did have remote tally readers in more than half of the county as far as election districts go. And then the remaining towns, we then drove the results back to the county seat, to the Hall of Records, and read those results at the Hall of Records.
All right.
Madam Chair, if I may pose a question here to the staff.
Yes, Vice President Palmeris.
Thank you. I recall when we were discussing the new machines coming in, I think it was Linda who may have explained, but forgive me, I may not be 100% right, that we had discussed reach out to each town clerk to ensure that the facilities would be appropriate for the new machines, something of that nature. I just wanted to know or confirm that we have a follow-up to the primary to ensure that the spaces that we had allotted would work again, because obviously we needed perhaps in some locations more tables and chairs or different accommodations to allow for people to sit down and vote. Is that something that is taking place systematically, or can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, Vice President Palmeris, Linda Von Nessy. Yes, we did discuss that, and I did reach out to every municipal clerk. I work closely with them. We had meetings. We went over the logistics and tried to find additional locations if one didn't work, or maybe we, for instance, Lawrence Avenue School, maybe we should split those districts and not have three if we can find another location. I do work closely with them, and that's something that I will continue to do through the general election. And I would also appreciate it if you or any of your colleagues have any suggestions of a site that you feel works better for your community than what we are using in all, please let me know, and I will go and assess it, make sure it's handicapped accessible. And if it works for you, we like to do what the community wants. That's where we get our voter turnout, is when they go to what they know. So I do not know every one of your towns, so I appreciate any input that you can provide.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up to that, are we limited in our ability to move locations from here to the general election, or are we committed now during the entire voting season?
No, we are not limited.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Von Nessy.
You're welcome.
That was a great question, Vice President Palmeris. Ms. Von Nessy, I have another question. You talked a couple minutes ago about some of the things that you've done in the past, your voter outreach. What do you foresee doing in the upcoming November election to help us overcome some of the hiccups that we experienced during the primary?
Commissioner Linda Von Nessy, anything that falls under the jurisdiction of the Board of Elections, I have a punch list right now that I'm working on. And we will do anything we can to make the process better.
Commissioners, if we don't have any more questions at this time, Commissioner Gill, we can move to go into executive session.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
We do have public comment. Do you want to do public comment now and then go into public session, closed session, or go into closed session and then come back out and do public comment?
Mr. Parlavecchio, what do you suggest?
maybe you want to take public comment now. It's not like we're coming out and voting on anything to do that. And then if that could be the last, the closed session could be the last item on the agenda.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll move to public comment.
Okay. If you're calling in, the number is 855-756-7520 and use the password 74541. The number is 855-756-7520 and password is 74541. After entering the password, listen to the prompt to press 0 to be placed in the queue to speak during the meeting. You'll be acknowledged to speak in the order that your call was received. Emails received for public comment will be read after calls are completed. So at this time, our public information officer will announce the callers so they can state their comment or question, and be reminded you have 3 minutes to speak. Please do not have your laptop or any electronic device on while calling in. Chala Malumba, our public information officer, can begin the public session now.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chala Malumba, Public Information Officer for the Essex County Board of Commissioners. We have one caller waiting to speak. The caller's name is Jack Gavin. Mr. Gavin, please state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. You may begin.
Thank you. I thank the commissioners, president, vice president, other officials for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jack Gavin, legally John Gavin. First, I'd like to congratulate the county on the new paper ballots and machines. That the paper trail that it provides is the gold standard in elections. And so I'm very pleased that you're leading on that front. I also greatly value the video that was produced to guide voters through the use of the new procedures that was produced in English and in Spanish. And I would just suggest that that video be promoted more widely. I was a challenger in West Caldwell in June. All of the 9 voting districts voted in the high school building in various rooms. I assume November will be the same, although I did hear that that could possibly change. The main gym had 5 districts, and being a challenger is kind of a new experience for West Caldwell. They haven't had challengers in the past, or at least not much, and so this was a little bit unusual for them to cope with. Depending on whether a challenger table can be in between and within earshot of maybe 2 districts' check-in tables, we're going to need either 3 or 5 challenger tables in the main gym to accommodate the 5 voting districts that are there. Now, I recognize that the foot traffic patterns and the access to electrical power for the machines and the rule about not being behind the check-in table makes such an arrangement of tables a challenge, but in particular, it cannot be done willy-nilly at 6 a.m. on election day. Is it the township clerk who designs the room layout and the table positions?
Linda Von Nessy, and thank you very much, Mr. Gavin. I appreciate your comment. I'm glad you're pleased with the machine. Challengers are appointed by candidates or by the respective parties. Each candidate or party is entitled to 2 per district. Actually, a challenger can challenge for every district. In West Caldwell, you could have been a challenger for every one of their districts, which would make it difficult for you with 5 districts there to hear the voter's name being announced in all those districts. I think that probably that's going to be very hard in any polling place with trying to keep everything private and having an individual challenging in 5 different districts and have the table close to the 5 districts to hear. So,
okay, perhaps I was not clear. We're going to have the people. We'll have 5 different challengers in the room if we have 5 tables, so that one is near each district. So it's really a question about can I expect the clerk to meet with us to map out how the tables can be arranged to satisfy the requirements, such as not being behind,
Mr.
to allow
Gavin, you
the
have 30
accommodation.
seconds if you want to just wrap up your comment, because it's not a back and forth, but you have 30 seconds to wrap up your comment.
Thank you very much. In June, the auxiliary gym at the high school had terrible heat condition. It was tropical, I would call it, and I had to run home to grab fans for everybody's health. The main gym was a little bit better, and so I would ask that if there are standards for temperature and ventilation, that they be checked out when you're deciding if a room is suitable for voting. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. You can answer the question, but we do not have any other callers waiting to speak.
If I may intervene at this point, just for the sake of the caller who called in, obviously this is not a back and forth, but all questions will be answered in writing as our policy. But might I also suggest that perhaps the caller, Mr. Gavin, can email Ms. Von Nessy some of the very specific concerns that he had, and then she could address it as well. Because I think there was something maybe the responsibility of the clerk over there. And so we want to just make sure we get that communication correct. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Mr. Vice President, we have one public comment submitted by email, and this is from Nadira Brown of Newark, New Jersey. Thank you, Essex County Board of County Commissioners, for the meeting today. There are many concerns about this election, but I want to focus on how long it took to count the votes and how the website does not reflect all of the county committee members. What is the time frame for votes to be counted? Once counted, are the write-in candidates contacted of the results? Who is responsible to do this task? As of today, the election results do not reflect the final outcome. Many districts are still missing from the site. Any assistance is greatly appreciated. Thank you, Nadira Brown. And Madam Chair and Vice President Pomares and the constituents and board, as our practice, your all questions and comments will be responded to in writing.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Durkin, that actually was a question that I received from a constituent, that it wasn't real clear for them on how they do a write-in. So would you respond to that question, please?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, Chris Durkin, County Clerk. So there are different responsibilities for different offices as far as certifying election results. As the County Clerk, I certify election results on the ballot, county election results, the state election results, federal election results. I do not certify county committee. So county committee, and that's what Ms. Brown's question was concerning, county committee results. County committee results are certified by each municipal clerk. And so specifically, this is the first election that county committee appeared, county committee members who filed petitions and who were on the ballot appeared on our website as candidates, and the results, the votes they received in this election were posted. But there were vacancies. So in vacant county committee districts, there were write-in votes. And those write-in votes were not posted on our website because if we open it up to write-in votes, that's write-ins for every office. And that would be a lot of write-ins for every office. So what we do is we certify the results that we have, both on the machine and then through Linda Von Nessy's office, the Board of Elections, the provisional ballots, the vote-by-mail ballots, and the write-ins to each municipal clerk. In this specific case, we certified the results to the municipal clerk of Newark, the city clerk of Newark, by the statutory deadline, which was June 22nd. And He then certified the results and alerted each winning candidate, whether or not they won as a candidate on the ballot or as a write-in. So that's the process and that's the procedure. As far as voting for a write-in, below each candidate on the ballot, if you follow right below the candidate who appears on the ballot, or if it's no petitions filed, right below it allows you for a write-in choice, and you must fill in the oval, just like you would have filled in the oval for a candidate who appears on the ballot. You fill in the oval for your write-in choice, and then you actually write in the name of the candidate that you would like to write in and vote for.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Durkin. Were there any more public callers on hold for public comment, Madam Clerk?
No. Madam Chair and Vice President, may I make a suggestion before you go into closed comment, closed session? When you come out, you'll adjourn, because I think all the items of the agenda have been addressed up until closed session. So you might want to consider, if you have any closing statement or remarks, to make it now and then go into closed session and then come out and adjourn. Michael, would you like to weigh in?
It's up to the chair. It's fine. We do have to adjourn in public session, so we will have to come out. So either way works.
Oh, we need to motion to end public comment?
No.
Madam Chair,
Yes, you need a
why don't we,
motion. I'm sorry. You do need to motion to come out of closed session, and the adjournment has to be an open session. Whether you do your final comments before or after that is just important.
Thank you. Madam Chair, why don't I suggest that we go into the commissioner comment session, and then upon conclusion of that, we go into the closed session, and then our staff will alert us, and we can come back into open and we can adjourn. Is that what I'm hearing, right, Mr. Parlavecchio, Madam Clerk?
I think that works, because if you have anybody watching or listening, that'll all be done before we go into closed session, and they don't have to sit watch a blank screen.
Sounds good. So why don't we go into the commissioner comment session at this portion of the meeting?
Before we do that, Ms. Spango was back, and Commissioner Johnson had asked a question when we lost her before we went into public comment. So I want to give Commissioner Johnson an opportunity to present his questions to Ms. Spango before we go to commissioner's comments. Ms. Spango, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh, thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes. My question was that during the course of them transferring the machines to the polling sites, who was responsible for making the decision on them doing West Essex first and then doing City of Newark last, in which I'm speaking of 3 wards in the City of Newark that didn't get theirs till very, very late, and that is the Central Ward, West Ward, and the South Ward of the City of Newark. And from what I was told, or what I heard, was that they were informed to do all of West Essex and all first, and get back to Newark last. It's having technical difficulties again.
Commissioner Cooper,
Yes.
may I say something? Perhaps Commissioner Johnson wasn't here at the very beginning when we spoke about that situation with Newark and Newark getting the machines last. And I guess it was Patty Spango who spoke about her problems with the delivery and the next election, Newark is going to be taken care of first before they move to the West Essex area, if I heard correctly.
I apologize, Commissioner Seabold and Commissioner Rufus Johnson. I'm having technical difficulties. I have our IT group here from the county with me, so I did not hear Commissioner Johnson's question. If you want to try to repeat it to me again, but I'm having a technical.
Commissioner Johnson, can you please repeat your question? You're on mute. We can't hear you.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. The question was, the machines, as you know, was delivered very, very late in the city of Newark, and specifically the west, south, and central. And a lot of people were chanted, and I don't want to say the other words because I want to save those for our closed session. But some people were told that they were ordered to do West Essex and then come down and do the Newark, the big city, because that's where their company is quote unquote supposed to be. Do that last because you'll be next to home. Is that true?
That is not true. The trucker, we submit the polling locations to the trucker. We give him a list. He made up his own schedule. That I have no knowledge, nor would I ever tolerate anything like that. That is not true. It froze again, right?
Commissioner Johnson? No, Ms. Bengal, we can hear you.
You're there.
Yes. That is part of what's being spin around throughout the city of Newark. And, you know, I've been approached quite a few times in reference to not only that, but some other things that we'll get into when we get into the closed session. So thank you, Mr.
Commissioner, if I can, Madam Chair. Commissioner Johnson, we're going into closed session to talk about a lawsuit. So it's not really opportunity to talk about a lot of other things. Talk about the lawsuit, the topics of that lawsuit. Did you have other questions that you wanted to ask?
No, but there's one specific that I know I don't want to ask on here.
Do you want to contact me personally, Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, because you may want to do it privately to her privately because it might not be appropriate for an appropriate reason to go on closed session. You could do that.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioner Johnson? You're done? All right. Ms. Bengal,
No, that's it.
Ms. Bengal, I do have a question. How far in advance did you receive the plan from the trunking company for the delivery of the machines?
I will give you the exact day. Hold on 1 minute. On May 17th, the machines were programmed, and the Board of Elections sent Brantley Brothers a polling location list. Brantley began to deliver machines May 27th. He had 8 days to deliver.
So you got the report back from him on May 17th? Okay. For what his delivery plan was?
No, May 17th is when he got the list. And yes, you're right. And voting, yes, we sent it, my warehouse sent it to him on May 17th as soon as we received it.
Okay.
But he did not follow his list either. His schedule, he did not follow it the way he had it down. But that's a whole other issue.
When did you find out that he didn't follow the schedule that he communicated to you?
Throughout the 8 days he was delivering, and I kept questioning him, and he was, well, no one was at that polling location, and we went here, we went there. He was picking up machines from the warehouse that were designated to go out on a different day. And I would find out after they were in his truck. My warehouse would call me and I would call him, and I just could never get a straight answer from him.
All right. Thank you. Moving with Vice President Palmera's suggestion, let's move to Commissioner comments. Vice President Palmeras, how would you like to start?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we could open it up. I mean, I think a lot of us had asked a lot of the questions that we wanted to, but here's an opportunity. If there was any comments you'd like to make, I personally would like to thank the administration for being here today and answering some of the questions. You know, I have faith that we have more time for training so we can improve what goes on in the polls with the poll workers. It was a new system and an awkward year. I would also like to encourage that we do extra follow-up, not only to our clerks. I know Ms. Von Nessy has been diligent in doing so, just to follow up again, even if it's at the expense of repeating the effort to ensure that accommodations such as the one caller who addressed us today had some inquiries to ensure that the polling locations know who's responsible for what. I'm a little bit, that would be an understatement, but I'm concerned about the delivery, of course, of the voting machines. I'm sure that everybody here shares the same concern that I do about this being, of course, one of the most crucial things that we get right. So I trust that we will be speaking to the vendor again, and we will be reviewing the protocol to ensure that this does not happen again. And Madam Chair, I would just open it up to any of our colleagues at this time, one at a time if they wish. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vice President. Commissioners, any other comments?
Commissioner Cooper.
Commissioner Graham.
I just got a text message from one of my constituents, and this is a question for Ms. Van Nessy. Do you have an email or cell phone of all the board workers? And if you do, would it be easier to send out reminders and alerts of important information leading up to the election day? Maybe that might be helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner. Linda Von Nessy. We do have, for some of our poll workers, we do ask for an email and cell numbers that's on the application. Some of them we get and some of them we do not. And many times we get a number and then when we try and reach out to them, it's disconnected. So it really, we could do it on an individual basis, but as a whole, it really would not, I don't think, work, but I'm willing to try anything to better the process.
Do you think it would be helpful to have maybe the chair or the ward chairs of each district to, maybe help and assist with that? So the process, they could, still get the information.
Yes, Commissioner. Linda Von Nessy, I have to say that the ward chairs and the municipal chairs are as important to me as the municipal clerks. They are wonderful. They help me with my poll workers. They help me if I have a problem with the polling place. We have very close contact with the chairs, and anything that any of you can do or any of the chairs can do is most appreciated, and it would be most helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Graham. Commissioner Johnson, any comments? Commissioner Sebo, any comments?
I have a comment. First of all, I'd like to thank the constitutional officers for being here today and working with us and with all of the problems concerned with this past election. This was a very, very difficult year because of COVID and because of new machines. It was a real problem, and I am convinced that the election in November will be much easier than it was now because we were really in a difficult time. So I want to thank you all for your terrific work on trying to make this as easy as possible with the new machines under troubling times. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sebo. Commissioner Gill, any comments?
Thank you, Commissioner. No, again, just to thank each of our election officials who took the time to be here today, and just to really stress what I said earlier. For me, this is all about looking forward, doing some of this retrospection, not in any way to to place blame, but to just make sure that we take stock of what happened and try to get it better as we as we approach November. I found this to be very helpful, just even for a person who's been involved to understand the process better. So clearly training, education, compensation are things that we have to focus on. The layouts, I'll just stress again, and I hope that the respective election officials will take this back. The layouts of the actual polling locations themselves, I think, are really need to be not just identified, but we need to think about them differently. This based on these new machines, based on the space, based on traditional space that we normally would have used, that made a lot of sense with touchscreen machines, or prior to that may not make the most sense for the new machines. One of the things that I hope we get to, and one of the I think the benefits of using the paper ballot in this type of technology, is that we can increase the speed. So we can increase the speed and the user experience, so to speak. So I'm encouraged by what I hear tonight. I appreciate the answers. I think there's going to be additional follow-up questions, and I'm sure, like all of my other colleagues, whatever we can do here to be of assistance to make your job both more any easier and allow it for you to do it to the best of your ability, please don't hesitate to let us know.
Thank you, Commissioner Gill. I too want to echo the same sentiments of my fellow colleagues. I want to thank the administration and constitutional officers today for participating, as well as the clerk staff and my commissioners. It was very educational. I appreciate your responses, and I really appreciate, it seems like many of you have already started to address some of the concerns that were brought to your attention well before this meeting today. So that is real hopeful and encouraging, hopeful to the constituents that we heard your complaints and that we've already addressed a lot of the issues. I want to thank the constituents for speaking up and bringing a lot of the issues and concerns to our attention. We cannot correct problems if we are not aware of the problems. So I look forward to a better system, more effective system for November. Again, at the top of the meeting, I asked if the constitutional officers could just take a moment and send us in writing what the corrective action plan is to address some of these issues, as the constituents are still reaching out to some of us with some of their concerns, so that we can respond with one collective voice about what we're going to do different to make for a better election in November. So thank you all again for tuning in. At this time, Vice President Palmeris, I'm going to turn the meeting back over to you so that we can go into closed session.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooper. We appreciate you chairing this portion of the meeting. At this point, we're going to go into a closed session because some of the things that we're talking about are pending litigation. And let me get confirmation from our staff. When we do that, we will then come back into open and probably take no action today. We will then adjourn the meeting. So let me get confirmation from our staff when we're ready that we are in closed. Madam Clerk?
Yes, I will. I'm reaching out now to see how we do this. This is the first time we're doing closed session virtually. So please hold on a moment.
Okay, everyone just stand by. Please be on mute.